All right, welcome to this live stream on the platform on a rapidly developing, and I've got to say, more and more concerning story. We talked last night to former National Northland MP Matt King, who had received in the mail a trespass order from Bridget Love, the head of Parliamentary Security, on the instructions of Trevor Mallard that he was to be trespassed for 2 years from Parliament grounds for walking amongst the protesters at that February protest and addressing them, as many other people did. We have this morning talked to Rodney Hyde, another former MP who was at the protest and spoke. And Rodney Hyde hadn't yet received a trespass notice, but Rodney Hyde was of the opinion, looking back through New Zealand law, that the trespass notice was fundamentally unenforceable and indeed outside the law. We talked to Tony Ellis, who was lead counsel on the case in 1999 that proved that point and created the precedent. He believes the head of Parliamentary Security should resign for incompetence for sending out an unenforceable trespass notice. And then we find today that another former MP and indeed leader of a political party of some note in the New Zealand political lexicon, the New Zealand First Party, has also been served or been sent a trespass notice. That person is, of course, Winston Peters, leader of New Zealand First, and Winston Peters joins us now. Thank you for taking the time to come on the platform, Winston. When did you get your trespass notice?
Well, the answer to that is not with any precision, because I went outside the front door to find on the doorstep an envelope which had the notice in it. And to be honest, I thought this has got to be a hoax. I mean, I was in Parliament in 1980 when the trespass law was passed. And of course, Mr. Ellis is right with respect to the 1999 rather, precedent that Mr. Ellis was involved in. So I looked at it and thought this has got to be both unreasonable and unlawful as a trespass to a person in the circumstances in which I was acting.
And you went down to that protest, and I know they wanted to see you there because many of them said to me, "Where's Winston?" You walked among them, you had some media cameras there with you, and you did speak to them, didn't you?
Well, I spoke to all the protesters, yes, and there were media people who saw me and followed me around. I didn't make a speech as others have done. I spoke to as many protesters as I possibly could, who were former police people, former lawyers, and current lawyers and doctors. All sorts of people were there, business people who had lost everything. And it was a very sad occasion in that respect. But in the end, I was pleased I went down, because I could not understand why all of Parliament had decided across the political divide that they wouldn't speak to these protesters, which are, fundamental rights being exercised by the people in this country and in any democracy.
So same terms as Matt King's, liable to a $10,000 fine, not allowed on the parliamentary precinct for 2 years. Is that?
Well, I don't know what's on his notice, but I know what's on mine, and I think it's roughly that's right.
So what have you done in response to that today?
Well, when I got over there, I thought that this is an absolute hoax, and I even looked at the signatures of the people who were purporting to send this notice. I then took legal advice, and that's why I put out the press statement saying that this is something that New Zealanders can't just stand by and do nothing about.
It could look like we have a speaker who, whilst he is meant to be impartial and represent the people of New Zealand, is going around looking at a way to take out or limit the ability of people from other political parties, other than the Labour Party, to campaign or engage in politics by denying them access to what is essentially, I guess, in a physical sense, the heart of New Zealand politics.
Well, you could say that, and some people will say that. The question is whether the Speaker has got the capacity to think that far into the future. But I am looking strictly at the law, and his failing to understand that protest at Parliament and after all, Parliament is the people's place, it used to be, is a legal right. And as a consequence of that, he has decided that despite the law, despite what Mr. Ellis says about the precedent of 1999 and the Act of 1980, he will take the law into his own hands. And he and people who think like him need to be stopped right here and right now.
How do you stop them?
Well, this is watch the space. This is just day one now for me, but I do not intend to stand by and let him get away with it.
So would you look to either breach the trespass notice, the alleged trespass notice, or the questionable trespass notice, or do you mount a legal challenge to it and get it announced a nullity?
Well, first of all, you can't breach an invalid claim or an invalid notice. That's number one. That's a distinction he needs to have known before he even tried this on. And the second thing is, we've got to spend money and time, and people are being asked to do that now. We're going to go the distance because we can't stand by and let this happen.
So what do you seek? A judicial review of the trespass notice? Do you take an action, or is that all under advisement at the moment?
It's the latter. It's all under advisement at the moment.
Winston, we haven't always seen eye to eye, but I've got to say we do on this one. You can't have a democracy if the field is tilted and someone who is meant to be in an impartial position takes action like this.
Well, as you know, you were a parliamentary reporter for a long time. The fact is that Parliament has appointed the Speaker as Parliament's person, not a political party or a political side of the argument's person. That person, he or she, is meant to be Parliament's person and act in an unbiased and neutral way. Nothing about this smacks of that behaviour. It smacks of coercion, dictatorial and arrogant behaviour, or somebody who, dealing with the precincts of Parliament, has simply lost the plot.
Because we asked Tony Ellis, is there any way that Bridget Love, the head of Parliamentary Security, could have sent you this trespass notice without being aware of Police versus Begg and the precedent and the limitations that put on the Speaker?
Well, frankly, the notice began with, of all things, Dear Winston, which is pretty presumptive when you think about it. I know it's modern, but Dear Winston. And they could have said, I've got news for you and it's all bad. But when I got over the preposterous nature of this hoax, I thought, I'm going to take this seriously. And that's when I thought I'll contact a couple of serious lawyers in this area and do something about it. And when you say about the 1999 case, anyone who took this action had to be thoroughly over the law before they, as I say, have so much damaged Parliament's reputation.
All right. This is not the first time that Speaker Mallard has taken actions or indeed made, and I might note his office is not returning our calls and says it has no comment to make on this.
Well, worse than that, he says it's not his decision. I mean, he doesn't understand the Latinism with respect to the...
Well, that seems highly unlikely given that 2 weeks ago he told Stephen Franks, another former MP in a Wellington restaurant, that he was going to trespass him from Parliament. And I've heard reports, secondhand conversations from Stephen Franks, who thought the Speaker was joking because it was so ridiculous, and then realised that he was deadly serious. So it feels like a man who is settling some scores. And I'm sorry, I think acting irrationally.
Well, I've got a legal background. Stephen's seriously got a legal background. Both of us, as you now tell me, thought that this has got to be a joke or it's got to be an idle threat. And then this morning, he claims that he's not responsible, but the Prime Minister dropped a minute when she said he was. So, this is so fundamental that I'm sure now right around Parliament, across the political divide even, and the Labour Party in particular, they're going to be so embarrassed by what's happening because it's not going to go away now.
Have you spoken to the Speaker's office? Have you sought clarification?
No, I haven't. And why would I? When you ask that question, the Speaker or anyone in a sort of for this brief moment, judicial position, has got to remain independent. And so as a matter of courtesy, you would not try and curtail or interfere with that person's neutral, independent decision-making. So, no, I have not spoken to him. But
Okay,
I don't
so
think now.
Yeah, you're waiting for the lawyers to get back to you, right?
No,
Your lawyers.
they've been back to me all morning.
Okay, and when are we going to hear what your next step is in this,
Well,
to be
we're
frank,
all flat
bizarre
out now.
situation?
Well, we're all flat out now, and everybody's busy, but very, very soon.
Winston Peters, nice to talk to you again after a while. Thank you very much indeed for your time, and thanks for joining us on the platform.
Well, we should do it more often, but perhaps not on such dramatically democracy-threatening issues.
Indeed. Thank you very much again for your time.
Thank
and
you.
That, folks, is the latest chapter in what is a rapidly evolving saga that I think does strike to the very heart of New Zealand democracy and raises some most concerning questions about the behaviour of the Speaker of Parliament, Trevor Mallard. Don't forget highlights of this interview, and you can hear it again on the platform website. That's the platform.kiwi. You can go and download the app, the platform app, and we will have highlights and indeed the entire interview available for replay there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.